Stripped of their guns, surrounded by hostile faces, 5 young Arapaho men faced certain death. Their captors, the Sioux, believed them to be scouts for the white soldiers, an accusation that carried a death sentence. Miraculously, a Cheyenne chief recognized them as brothers and demanded their release. But freedom was a mirage. They were still watched, unable to flee, unknowingly on the precipice of witnessing the carnage of Little Big Horn. Among the young men of the Plains tribes, a common path to proving their mettle involved forming small war parties. Waterman and Arapaho later recounted. A long time ago, when I was a young man, it was the custom of the young Indians to go on small war parties looking for Shoshone or other unfriendly tribes. These expeditions were ventures into contested territories, targeting groups like the Shoshone or other perceived hostiles. Success was measured by tangible proofs of daring and skill. If our medicine was good, we sometimes returned to camp with a scalp or a number of ponies, Waterman noted. The acquisition of enemy horses was particularly esteemed. To infiltrate an enemy camp under the cover of darkness, locate a prized horse tethered outside a teepee, cut its rope and ride it away was an act of considerable bravery, a deed that brought status and recognition. It was considered a very brave deed for an Indian to slip into an enemy camp at night and cut the rope of a horse outside a teepee and ride him away. By the time of the significant engagement on the Little Big Horn River, Waterman had lived 22 snows. In that period, his Arapaho tribe was encamped near Fort Robinson. There, the Arapahos were camped at Fort Robinson, where they drew their rations from the government, a common arrangement as traditional ways of life became increasingly pressured by westward expansion and governmental policies. It was from this agency setting that Waterman and 4 companions, other young men eager for experience and honor, decided to embark on such a scouting expedition. Waterman identified his associates, and I, with 4 other young bucks, slipped out of the agency to go on a scouting party. For shown with me were Yellow Eagle, Yellow Fly Well, knowing one in left hand. Their objective was clear: to locate the Shoshone, traditional adversaries, thereby adhering to the established customs of young warriors seeking to validate their prowess and serve their tribe. This departure from the agency, a calculated move away from the oversight of government agents, marked the beginning of a journey that would lead them into unforeseen circumstances far removed from a typical search for the Shoshone. Their skills in tracking, stealth, and survival, honed from youth, would be their primary assets as they ventured from the relative security of their designated territory. The 5 Arapaho warriors commenced their expedition, directing their mounts north. We rode north into the buffalo country, Waterman stated, indicating a movement towards regions still populated by bison, the lifeblood of plains culture and a common ground for various tribes, both friendly and hostile. Their journey progressed without recorded incident for some days, the young men likely employing established scouting techniques, moving cautiously, utilizing terrain for cover, and constantly scanning their surroundings for signs of game, enemies, or other travelers. One day, their path brought them near the Little Big Horn River. It was here, in this now historically resonant landscape, that they encountered another group. And one day, near the Little Big Horn River, we met a small party of Sioux, Waterman recalled. The Sioux, a powerful confederation of tribes, were a significant presence in this region. The initial interaction with this small Sioux party appeared amicable, or at least non-threatening. According to Waterman, they told us that the Sioux were going to have a Sundance and said that we should come along with them to the Sioux village and have a good time. The Sundance was a sacred and pivotal ceremony for the Sioux, a time of spiritual renewal, fasting, and prayer, often drawing large gatherings. An invitation to attend such an event, particularly to warriors from another tribe, could be interpreted as a gesture of goodwill or alliance. The Arapaho group, perhaps seeing an opportunity for peaceful interaction, trade, or simply to observe, accepted the invitation. However, the underlying perception of the Sioux towards these Arapaho was not one of straightforward welcome. Waterman would later understand the grave suspicion that clouded this encounter. Afterward, I learned that these Sioux thought we were scouts for the white soldiers. In the tense atmosphere of 1876, with increasing military pressure on non-treaty tribes, any unidentified Native American party especially those coming from the direction of agencies like Fort Robinson, could be viewed with distrust. The accusation of scouting for the U.S. Army was a severe one, potentially marking the Arapaho as enemies aligned with the forces seeking to subjugate the free roaming tribes. This unspoken suspicion set a dangerous undertone to what seemed like a casual invitation to a cultural event. The 5 Arapaho warriors rode onward with their Sioux escorts. We rode along with them, as Waterman recounted. As their combined party neared the Sioux encampment, the welcoming facade rapidly dissolved. And as we came near the village, a great many Sioux came out of the camp to meet us. This was not a reception of honor, but one of organized intent. The Sioux warriors swiftly surrounded the Arapaho. Without ceremony, they took all our guns away and made us prisoners. The pretense of an invitation to a Sundance vanished, replaced by the stark reality of captivity. The accusation was immediately levied. The Sioux declared that the Arapaho were scouts of the white man and that they are going to kill us that night. For Waterman and his companions, Yellow Eagle, Yellow Fly, Well-Knowing One, and Left Hand, the situation was critical. They were disarmed, outnumbered, and deep within a large hostile camp, their lives forfeit based on a suspicion. That night they were placed under strict confinement. We were guarded so we could not escape. The prospect of summary execution loomed. Deliverance arrived from an unexpected quarter, and in the morning Two Moon, chief of the Cheyenne, learned we were Arapaho. Two Moon, Eyewitness, a prominent Cheyenne leader whose band was camped with the Sioux as part of the large coalition, was informed of the Arapaho's presence and their predicament. Recognizing a tribal affinity, Two Moon took direct action. He went to the Sioux chiefs and made them give us back our guns and set us free. His intervention was based on a long-standing alliance. The Cheyenne and the Arapahos have always been brothers. The Cheyenne and Arapaho languages are both Algonquian, and the two tribes had a history of mutual support and alliance against common enemies. Faced with the insistence of a respected ally like Two Moon, the Sioux leadership partially conceded. The Sioux gave us our guns, Waterman confirmed. However, this did not equate to complete freedom or a restoration of trust. The Sioux kept a close watch on us so we could not get away. Though armed, the 5 Arapaho warriors remained detained, their movements restricted, and their status ambiguous within the sprawling encampment. They were no longer slated for immediate execution, but their ability to leave was curtailed, binding their fate to that of the Sioux and Cheyenne village, forced into an uneasy cohabitation. We remained in the Sioux camp and saw the sun rise twice, Waterman stated. These 2 days were spent under the surveillance of their Sioux hosts, the Arapaho party undoubtedly observing the camp's routines, the numbers of warriors, and the general atmosphere of anticipation. The village itself was a significant entity. After this initial period of 2 days, a collective decision was made by the leadership within the Allied encampments. Then the whole village moved farther down the river and made another camp. Such relocations were common for large plains Indian villages, driven by the need for fresh grazing for vast horse herds, sanitation, or strategic positioning. The scale of this new camp, established further along the river, traditionally known as the Greasy Grass to the Lakota, or Little Bighorn, was immense. Waterman, a seasoned young man from a tribe accustomed to large gatherings, was nonetheless struck by its sheer size. It was the biggest camp I ever saw. There were thousands of warriors, I do not know how many. His inability to quantify the fighting men underscores the extraordinary congregation of Lakota Sioux, primarily Hunkpapa, Oglala, Minneconjou, Sanzark, and Blackfeet Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and a few Arapaho individuals. This massive village, stretching for miles along the river valley, represented one of the largest gatherings of Plains tribes in recorded history, a formidable force united by a desire to resist encroachment on their lands and way of life. The Arapaho group, still unable to depart, witnessed another sunrise in this new vast settlement. The passage of time was marked by the sun. When the sun came up again, that was the day of the fight. This third sunrise, after their initial 2 days of confinement, and the first in the relocated camp, heralded Sunday, the 25th of June, 1876. The atmosphere within the camps, already charged by the recent Sundance ceremonies and the presence of so many warriors, likely grew more intense as scouts reported the approach of U.S. Army columns. As the sounds of battle erupted and warriors from the sprawling village surged to meet the soldiers attacking from the south under Major Marcus Reno, and then the column approaching from the east under Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, Waterman and his Arapaho companions became inadvertent observers. At some point during the engagement with Custer's command, Waterman ascended a vantage point. "When I reached the top of the hill, I saw Custer," he recounted. His identification of Custer suggests the officer was recognizable, perhaps by his attire or distinctive buckskin clothing. Waterman's description of Custer's state is precise. He was dressed in buckskin coat and pants and was on his hands and knees. This posture indicates Custer was already wounded and struggling. Waterman observed further critical details. He had been shot through the side and there was blood coming from his mouth. This suggests a severe, likely mortal wound. Despite his injuries, Custer was still conscious and aware. He seemed to be watching the Indians moving around him. Waterman noted a poignant image of a commander witnessing the final moments of his unit's disintegration. Around the fallen officer were a few remaining soldiers. 4 soldiers were siding up around him, but they were all badly wounded, Waterman observed. This small group represented the last pocket of organized resistance in Custer's immediate vicinity. Beyond them, the scene was one of complete military collapse. All the other soldiers were down. The rapid and overwhelming nature of the attack by the combined Lakota and Cheyenne warriors had evidently decimated Custer's command. The final moments for this group were swift. Then the Indians closed in around him, and I did not see him, Waterman stated. The surge of warriors enveloped the last defenders, and Waterman's direct line of sight to Custer was obscured. His observation provides a glimpse into the final desperate minutes on and around the knoll now known as Last Stand Hill. While he did not witness Custer's death blow, he saw him grievously wounded and surrounded. Waterman also noted the prevalence of arrow wounds among the fallen soldiers. Most of the dead soldiers had been killed by arrows, as they had arrows sticking in them, indicating the significant role of archery in the battle, alongside firearms and the close-quarter nature of the final fighting. The warriors, armed with a variety of weapons including bows, lances, war clubs, and firearms, ranging from older muzzleloaders to newly acquired repeating rifles, had overwhelmed Custer's force. Sometime after the immediate intensity of the fighting subsided, Waterman again encountered the physical remains of Lieutenant Colonel Custer. "The next time I saw Custer, he was dead, and the Indians were taking his buckskin clothes," he stated. The buckskin attire that had made Custer recognizable during the battle was now a spoil of war. A dispute arose among the warriors over these garments. The Indians were quarreling, each trying to take the clothes away from the other. Waterman did not ascertain the outcome of this particular contest for Custer's clothing. "I don't know who got them." By Waterman's estimation, the main engagement had concluded by mid-afternoon. The fight was all over when the sun was there about 3 o'clock. With the cessation of organized resistance from the soldiers, a new phase began on the battlefield. The squaws then crossed the river and began taking the clothes off the dead soldiers. This was a common practice in plains warfare, where captured goods, clothing, and weapons were valuable resources. The process was not without its own dangers or grim discoveries. Sometimes one that was not yet dead would move a little, and the squaws would become frightened and scatter, Waterman observed, a detail that paints a vivid picture of the gruesome scene. He did not personally investigate the specific actions of the women among the dead and wounded soldiers. What the squaws did to the dead soldiers I do not know because I did not go back and see. Waterman did note the practice of scalping. "I saw many soldiers who were scalped," he confirmed, though he added, "but I don't know if Custer was scalped or not." Historical accounts generally concur that Custer's body was not scalped, though it bore multiple wounds. After witnessing these immediate consequences of the battle, Waterman, along with his Arapaho companions, still technically captives but with a degree of mobility within the larger group, withdrew from the scene of carnage. "Because I went back across the river to the camp after the fight was over." Their direct involvement as battlefield observers had concluded. The ground where Custer's command fell became a landscape marked by the detritus of intense combat. The bodies of the slain soldiers bore evidence of the weaponry used against them. One account mentions 26 arrows retrieved from the body of one of the troopers after the battle. Over the subsequent years and decades, the Little Bighorn battlefield continued to yield artifacts. A Colt .45 single-action Army revolver found on the battlefield years later speaks to the armament of the 7th Cavalry. Similarly, weapons taken by the victorious warriors became heirlooms. The Springfield trapdoor carbine was taken from a dead trooper. It was in the Sioux warriors' family until the 1950s. Another firearm, this Colt 1816 model revolver, was found in 1935. It was found half buried in the riverbank. No doubt this was dropped by a warrior, offering a tangible link to an individual participant. In the immediate aftermath, before any organized burial efforts, the field was littered with horse bones, horses' shoes, leather tack, and other relics await burial in 1877. The sheer number of dead horses was a significant feature of the battlefield. Long after the event, warriors like Stumphorn, an old Cheyenne warrior, holds a carbine he captured at the battle 44 years before, kept mementos of their involvement. As time passed, the Little Bighorn battlefield became a tourist attraction. In the years after the battle, many of the relics laying on the surface were taken back to homes across the states. Early photographs, such as one from 1877 photograph, shows horse bones on Last Stand Hill. Small timber stakes can be seen in the ground, the first markers of where a trooper fell. Document the initial efforts to mark and understand the site. Even decades later, such as in the 1940s, horse bones found on Last Stand Hill in the 1940s. The bones were found while digging a trench for a pipe, showing how the land held its secrets. Smaller personal items like pen knives found on the battlefield and a trooper's boot found after the battle provided intimate glimpses into the lives of the soldiers. So many horse bones found around the battlefield were collected that the monument was filled with them. The collection of relics from both sides found on the battlefield continued for many years. The isolated nature of the location meant that, as the location of the battlefield was so remote, bones were left on the surface for over a year before they were buried. A stark reality of frontier warfare and its aftermath. Waterman's unwilling presence provided a unique Arapaho perspective on these pivotal events. His journey, begun as a youthful scouting trip, placed him at the center of a significant military engagement. The battlefield itself, littered with the debris of conflict, slowly yielded its physical history to time and discovery.